Thank you all very much for joining us today, and a big happy Halloween. You may see some differences in the webinar format today. Behind me is a special costume that our lead engineer, Luke Sandin, created for a recent show. This didn't make it on time, but this is a lobster spaceman outfit, partially made of components used in previous engine tests in our engine test facilities. So looking forward to donating this tonight. So I hope you all have fun. I hope you all are planning for some fun Halloween activities. If not this past weekend, then the next weekend. I'm really excited to get out there with my own kids tonight. So, all right. Just got back yesterday from attending a New Worlds conference out in Austin, Texas. New World Space Conference, actually. And Lindsay, my chief of staff, attended as well. We were each able to make some great connections out there. And actually, just as in a couple of examples, I talked to an educator named Dr. Mark Wagner, and we heard his talk, who is looking to redesign typical school curriculums to better focus on hands-on learning and introduce middle and high school students to really a whole wide range and variety of subjects like anthropology, engineering, and space topics. Of course, I really liked his approach and his way of looking at how to do education. I thought it was really interesting. He did not pay me in any way or even suggest I do this, but I'm looking forward to reading his book. This is called Space Education, Preparing Students for Humanity's Multi-Planet Future. Very intriguing, at least as his webinar was, and I'm looking forward to understanding his approach. So recommend others check it out. I assume this is on Amazon. I have no idea. Check it out. Also spoke with some scientists who are looking at different ways of slowing down global warming. This, of course, is a big reason that we're doing what we're doing at bluShift with our carbon neutral propulsion system. So they're principally looking at deploying on what's called an earth shade to protect our planet. This is one of many methodologies effectively what you would call geoengineering to decrease the effects of climate change. Really interesting to hear, and some of the studies they did around some really interesting studies around like just what would be the impact to a city like Miami, and it was something like close to $1 trillion impact within the next few decades, just due to increasing sea levels. I also attended a talk by a private citizen who flew on the 18th mission of the New Shepard. That's Blue Origin's suborbital space tourist rocket. Did just last year. His name is Chris Boscheisen, and he is the founder of Planet. So many of you guys might already know his name. Planet was one of the, well, actually probably was maybe the first significant company to commercialize services using nanosatellites. And in their case, it was Earth imaging satellites that take detailed images of the planet on a daily basis. That was really interesting. Now, the Planet, by the way, is a nanosatellite company who fits exactly our bill for, really our customer, our target customers. These are satellites would fit very well in our red dwarf launch vehicle, and where we're launching off the coast of Maine into polar sun-synchronous orbit, particularly lends itself well to this this type of satellite, Earth imaging satellite. So a very interesting conversation, actually presentation by him as well. And rather motivating as well during a lunch session. So since our last webinar on October 5th, early October, there was a CNN video about us that was finally published. It was actually recorded back in June. And we'll post a link in the chat room here. There we go. Thank you, Lindsay. And I'm really proud of what was shown in this piece. It feels very authentic to who we are here at bluShift. Sometimes a little bit silly because they asked me to eat the fuel on camera, which I partook in. Some of the cameramen actually did the same under an NDA. But anyways, it really makes their piece really made a case for sustainability and how sustainability needs to be incorporated into really what's the final bastion of transportation that has not been touched about doing things in a more environmentally friendly way. And that's the space transportation industry. And that is what we are doing at bluShift. Our Marvel engine technology incorporated into our future Starless Rogue and then Red Dwarf rockets use a bio-derived, non-toxic, which is quite unusual, and carbon neutral fuel. Okay, well, the reason why we got this webinar, the main thrust behind this webinar is really to introduce everybody today to what is equity crowdfunding. And, there's been a lot of confusion. We've, we've had, well over 1,000 investors, but we probably have well over 1,000 more, excuse me, questions about what is equity crowdfunding? How does it work? How does it differ from traditional fundraising? How do I invest in bluShift? But what is this stuff? And, Refunders has been a real leader in this area. And so I'd like to introduce you to Casey Leffers. He is our Refunder rep behind the scenes. He's really helped us out with many of your questions. And we want to make sure that all the questions that folks might have are getting answered. And he's one of those experts. So, we ultimately decided to host this webinar because of this topic to really clarify folks what is equity crowdfunding and introduce them to WeFunder, really the leader in this area. So with that, Casey, please take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sasha and Lindsay, for inviting me today. Super excited to be here. bluShift is a really excellent company. It's a great example of a lot of the kind of clean tech, eco-friendly, groundbreaking businesses that we host on our platform. And yes, I love to talk about WeFunder and make sure everyone knows kind of who we are and what we're about. WeFunder is a regulation crowdfunding platform. A lot of people draw comparisons to platforms like Kickstarter and Indiegogo, but there are a couple really big differences between us and those other platforms. The main one is that we're not really a rewards-based crowdfunding system. Sure, some campaigns do offer perks or things like that, but for the most part, we are a platform to invest. We are a platform for ordinary people to be able to participate in early stage investing. I'm sure, as many of you know, it is really difficult to invest in private companies unless you are what is called an accredited investor. So this is a legal standard that's established, by the federal government and the SEC to dictate who can invest. And it's based off of how much money you make. It's based off of how many liquid assets you hold, and is not at all accessible to just your average person. So WeFunder got started way back in 2012. It started with our CEO initially circulating a pamphlet, basically like an online pamphlet that then got turned into a petition to put what was called regulation crowdfunding at the time in the Jobs Act, which was later passed. And we have a really beautiful origin story that started with our CEO meeting with senators and representatives and basically lobbying for over 2 years to bring this into life. And it all started with the fact that our founder, Nicholas Tomarello, went through Y Combinator, which is a very well-known startup accelerator, and realized that as a person who was not accredited, he was fairly broke, like a lot of people who are just kind of starting off what their companies are, was unable to invest in his friends and people who he was going through the accelerator with, and was kind of rightfully pretty disappointed in that, which started our journey into creating angel investing as something that is accessible to literally anyone. So I guess just to kind of break it down, we were founded back in 2012 and are the first regulation crowdfunding platform. There are other ones out there, but the source code of our website, anytime you go to wefunder.com, that is the same URL that was that petition many years ago. So kind of a cool callback. We're expanding into the European Union as well. We have 50% of the market share of the regulation crowdfunding market. And fundamentally, we exist for two different types of people. We exist for investors to gain access to really lucrative, equity-based investments, as well as founders to be able to raise funding from a source that is outside of your typical venture investing or angel investing pathways. So, and what's nice about that is, we have some really great technology. We're an SEC regulated entity. We take compliance very seriously. And so we're just an effective solution for both people gaining access to those early stage companies, as well as founders being able to raise from their communities, their customers, their friends and families. I worked with, a lot of college age founders who, like, their dorm rooms can invest in them. So that's really the goal, is to create a platform, as we've already created, that anyone can participate in. At the end of the day, we're a vehicle that helps everyone. For founders, it saves them time and it gives them the ability to market their raise to as many people as possible. And for investors, we're basically a Robinhood for pre-IPO companies. And probably the most important part, we are a public benefit corporation. So we do exist, not only to be a profitable company, but to make sure we can change capitalism to benefit everyone. And I put the link to our public benefit charter in the chat. So if you want to take a look at that, I recommend giving it a read, and really kind of covers what we're about and a little more granular. I'm also happy to talk a little bit about bluShift itself. Their raise has been going great, and they are raising on what's called a simple agreement for future equity. We see this very often on the platform. It's one of the most popular fundraising vehicles that we see. And it's a little bit different than a normal investment where it's not exactly equity, but is a convertible security. So what that means is it is a document that you invest in. Every investor is given a contract that says when bluShift raises money in the future, that contract will convert into that equity. And what's nice is that this can be particularly lucrative for investors because provided the business grows as expected, you're able to get a nice basically discount on that equity in the future. So that's kind of my spiel about WeFunder. I'm super excited to be here and happy to field any questions about both kind of the back end of bluShift and also WeFunder as a platform.
Thank you very much, Casey. That was awesome. I just want to, folks who don't know, we were kind of originally going to go through the traditional route of fundraising after we had launched Stardust last year, and January 31st of last year, making history as the first company to have launched a rocket using a non-toxic bio-derived carbon neutral fuel. But immediately the day after we launched the rocket, and this was on YouTube Live and a couple thousand people were watching, we had hundreds of people per day reaching out to us. How can I invest in bluShift? How can I invest in bluShift? And so we changed gears. Instead of kind of going the traditional route for very early rounds of fundraising, we checked out Equity Crowdfunding, and that's where we locked on to WeFunder. And it's been really a game changer for us. We're questioning a lot of things within from different standpoints. One, aerospace company doing space launch using fuel that isn't toxic, that's carbon neutral. There's a lot of folks that would say that's impossible, it can't be done. We proved them otherwise. Doing this from the state of Maine, not your traditional location for doing space launch. But I think we're seeing that type of model breaking down already. We have companies launching from Scotland and from New Zealand and in very untraditional locations already. Maine is going to be the next major region to embrace the new space industry. So anyways, with that, I want to kind of open this up to questions that folks might have, your very specific questions. So if you have any questions, it could be about my update earlier on about the CNN video, but of course, specific questions you have around investing, WeFunder, Equity Crowdfunding, how's this all work? Please post them here on the Zoom chat. And if you've talked to bluShift, talk to your friends or family about bluShift, and they have had questions, even though you may know the answers, I encourage you to post them here too, because surely if your friends and family have had those questions, there's others out there that could benefit from hearing the answer. So don't be afraid of, if you personally asked me or somebody else on staff about how equity crowdfunding works, don't be afraid to repost it if you think it might help others really understand what we're doing here. And of course, any original questions you might have. So to kind of get it started here, I'm going to ask some very big scope questions just to prime the pump here. What, from your standpoint, Casey, why is equity crowdfunding really so exciting?
Yeah, really good question. I think you actually have a piece in the answer to what you mentioned earlier in how bluShift, initially when you did your launch with Stardust, people were coming to you asking to invest. In traditional investing, that's just not something that happens. Typically it's done through very specific networks, and in a lot of ways is kind of a broken system. So I think what's exciting is that it's really a new frontier for early stage companies and provides access to both founders and investors in a very groundbreaking way.
Cool. And what has been Refunders' role in sort of the evolution of equity crowdfunding? I think you stated at the beginning, but my understanding is you guys have been you were the ones to start. You pushed with Congress, and you guys have been the leaders, right? Am I not right in terms of the number of investors and companies that you brought in?
Yeah, that's correct. So we've been around since 2012. Realistically, we didn't have functioning rules. The actual government did not give us guidelines for us to use to actually run the company until 2014. And then over time, we've kind of developed hand in hand, with the SEC to develop the rules and make sure we have something that's still very compliant and very safe for investors, but also not too onerous in terms of reporting requirements, things like that. But yeah, so we've been around for a while, and then we are the single largest Reg CF platform in the world. So there are kind of similar companies that exist in both Canada and the EU, and we've consistently been larger than them. So our specifically Reg CF market share has pretty much always been the largest.
That's cool. Awesome. And what do you see as, equity crowdfunding really enabling that traditional investing hasn't in the past?
Yeah, so I think there's a few different things. One of them is that if you look at venture funding, and I know very recently, I think it was Publica or maybe it was Times released an article that showed specifically Black founders received a minuscule amount of overall investment from institutional investors. And then you see a lot of similar trends around companies who are not in California or New York. You see very similar trends around companies that are not necessarily as a typical Silicon Valley investment. You see that for minority founders, you see that for female founders, and you see it for foreign founders. So I think for us, it's a leveling of the playing field in a lot of ways, and I think that's a really key difference between us and more typical investing.
Yeah, that's certainly been the case for us. It's being in Maine it's almost like being on an island in the space industry in terms of getting people to understand what we're doing. I mean, when we talk to people and we go on the West Coast and we share this with investors, there's sort of this incredible belief that we've done as much as we've done today with really what's over the course of our company's lifetime of less than, about $2 million investment. People can't believe it because really there's probably a 5X additional amount of money that's being invested in companies to do what we've done, but on the West Coast or in Texas. So I think it's exactly, it enables what you would say is more, investment into rural companies that don't. There's the brains, the intelligence, the innovation going on, just not the eyes on from the investor standpoint. I did see that we got a few questions here, so I'm going to pop over to them. Have you found, let's see, Betta's asking, have you found that folks who are interested in investing in a company on WeFunder get put off from the online nature of the platform? And if so, how do you encourage people to stick with it and get through the online investment process?
That's a good question. So I would say what's nice is that we have a really talented product team. So almost half of our company are actually engineers. As you can imagine, with all the payments we process, with all the companies that we launch, over 2,000 to date, there's a lot of technical stuff going on. So I think just having a really smooth user experience is helpful. That's been a really clear advantage we've had over kind of other platforms. So I think that's one kind of key point. Additionally, I think while it's definitely harder to convince someone to invest outside of just interpersonal. Obviously, if I could just put Sasha in a room with every investor he could ever talk to, he could probably raise more money than most people I know. But that's not always an option. We can't fly Sasha all over the globe every day. So I think being able to send someone just a link, and in that link having a video, in that link having a pitch deck, and in that link having the terms that the business is raising on, just allow it to spread kind of all over the place.
Yeah, and I think a bit of the question was also around with folks who were with us who were when we first opened this round. There were some issues, I think, with WeFunder that just converted over to a new website and a lot of hiccups and stuff that caused a lot of extra pains. And I think there's some confusion that goes on. What we see is that, folks can email us, reach out to us directly if they're having issues or they're not quite sure of how the process works, and we can connect you with Casey to kind of get these resolved. And I think we've been doing that, and Casey's been a wonderful rep for us. Okay, Thomas asks, maybe this is kind of related. I have invested in bluShift, but I have no documentation of that investment. How will my heirs access the result of my investment?
Yeah, really good question. So because the round itself is actually rolling, so it's still open, it's ongoing. The actual investment contracts, the executed ones that you'll receive basically as proof of your investment, haven't been fully executed. They've been partially executed. Once bluShift's round closes, you will have in your Refunder account under refunder.com/portfolio. I can drop the link in later. You'll be able to see all your Refunder investments, if you have additional ones or just one in bluShift, and you'll be able to download a zip file that will have all of the executed contracts for your investment.
So that zip file would be something they would share with their heirs.
Yes, yeah, that would functionally act as the same thing as if you were to sign a contract for equity in any other investment. Okay,
fantastic. Okay, Casey, can you share a story of one of the more successful crowdfunding experiences you've seen, and what was the company, and how did they get people excited about investing? How much did they raise, and all that good stuff?
Really good question. I can think of a couple. I'll tell you about the first one that I saw in my time at Refunder. That was just like a truly kind of blowing the top off of what, honestly, even our website could sort of withstand at the time. And that was when Mercury Bank raised with us. So that they're a sort of a bank specifically for startups. They have a really kind of slick product, very cool company, and they raised. They set the record at the time, which was $5 million in about, I think, 6 hours. And they actually raised, yeah, it was wild. They raised far, far, far more than that. But the rules in regulation crowdfunding, basically we're only allowed to accept $5 million every 12 months for each company. So they couldn't accept more than that. But I think they got up to 10 or 12. We actually had to reduce people's investments down to like $1,000 each, just to make sure everyone can get in. And they raised exclusively from their customers. So it is a bank for startups. And essentially what they did was they have tens of thousands of different startups who use them, and then essentially just started sending them emails, and used, I think, their app as well to give them the link, and essentially said, we are raising funds, and this is your chance to invest in the business. I think also because it's a bank in particular, that was very kind of alluring to people, like, all right, well, if I'm putting my money here, I might as well also have an investment in them. And obviously, it's been a successful business thus far. So yeah, that was really excellent. Ahmad, who is the founder of Mercury, is really cool. He's written some great pieces on why they also decided to do CF. And for them, like, they raised exclusively from their customers.
That's awesome. Okay, the moral of the story there is be a bank and have an app. I'm sorry, oversimplifying.
I have one shampoo company did great. Curl Mix as well. They raised $5 million.
That's true. Yeah. I think I saw that. Yeah.
And that was also mostly from their customers.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Average check size.
Okay. So how does someone invest in Refunder? And I think more specifically, how does somebody invest in, I think what they're asking here is, how does somebody invest in a company through Refunder? What payments do you guys support? What's the fee structure, et cetera?
Yeah, so we support most payments. I guess I should answer the first part of the question first. Super easy to invest in Refunder. All you go to is refunder.com, and then you'll be able to see our entire list of companies under our Explore page. And then all you have to do is click the invest button and enter how much you would like to invest in that company. You'll be prompted to create an account, but it's a pretty fluid process. In terms of payments, we accept a lot. You can do wire transfer, ACH, check, credit card, all of those work on the platform. In terms of investor fees, there's a 2% fee that's capped at $100 for us to pay Stripe mostly.
Pay Stripe. And then there is some ways in which investors can invest and remove or at least reduce the fees in bluShift. Well, what are those?
Yeah, so if it's your first investment on the WeFunder platform, what you can do, provided you fully complete the investment when you first come in, is you can essentially not pay the fee for your investment, and it's kind of like your initial welcome basket to WeFunder, as we'll waive that fee. And if for whatever reason that doesn't happen, just feel free to reach out to hello@WeFunder or support@WeFunder.com.
Great. And then my understanding is that accredited investors invest over 25,000 can invest with basically all fees cleared, except for there's $100 fee to cover the Stripe transaction, whether it's ACH, etc. Is that right?
Yeah, that is correct. So any investors that are brought in by the company itself. So in this case, any investor that's a friend of bluShift who hears about their the WeFunder raise via any sort of bluShift channels is able to have the WeFunder success fee, which is how we make money, waived totally. So for any raise on the platform, WeFunder will take a small percentage of the total amount raised. We don't charge anything up front. We do our best to be a very founder-friendly platform. We do not really cost money to get started, to do any legal filings, to review profiles, things like that. And yes, Sasha's absolutely right. For those larger investments, we just kind of waive the fee.
Very cool. Great. I think it's your guys' way of encouraging traditional investors to also consider equity crowdfunding and making it pretty low on the fee side. That's great. Okay, so here's another question. I think this actually for me, when does the current round close? And I think, actually do not have our page up now, but I think it's in mid-December. Going from memory, it's around December 14th. I actually do not have the, maybe Casey, you can bring that up since you have the computer right there. Meanwhile, I'm going to answer another question while Casey's looking that up. There's a 40% main investment tax credit or rebate. How is that handled through WeFunder? Okay, so what he's referring to, and this is actually something that not only folks who are located in the state of Maine, where we are, but folks who are outside the state of Maine can take advantage of. This is a program by an organization called FAME, F-A-M-E, of Maine, which is a governmental organization that's incentivizing investments in small innovative startups like our own. We actually had to apply to it, get accepted, and it basically reserves like a couple $1 million that we can tap into that effectively either gives you back money as a tax credit if you have any sort of tax liability here in the state of Maine, or if you're outside the state of Maine and you invest in us, you actually get up to 40% of your investment back over the course of 4 years. And my understanding is there's not a whole lot of states where you can invest in an innovative company in the state and you're actually sort of guaranteed getting at least 40% of your investment back. So it's really incredible. Now, once you've done this, what you basically need to do is you need to email me directly, or reach out, contact me, email me. And there's a form you need to fill out. You can find it on FAME of Maine. And I basically have to sign it and give it back to you. You file it with the state of Maine. And if you're outside the state of Maine, you just simply get checks over the next 4 years, refunding you 40% of your investment. Otherwise, if you're in the state of Maine, you get a tax credit for any of your tax liabilities with the state. So it's a really cool incentive, and just makes it really clear that bluShift is an easily attainable investment, and really, for me at least, obviously appealing. And thank you. Lindsay just posted the link, and we'll put it not only here in the chat, but in the video below on where you can get more information about the Maine Seed Capital Tax Credit Program of the FAME of Maine. Okay, I wasn't sure if there's any other questions. I don't see any more pop up. So wanted to thank you guys all very much for attending today's session. And we'll go ahead and post the link to our WeFunder. Oh, actually, let me back up, because Casey, you probably looked up and saw what the closing date is. It's December, what day is it?
13th.
13th. Okay, I was off by 1 day. December 13th is the closing date. So thank you for asking. So thank you guys all very much for attending today's session. I hope this helped clarify, a lot of questions and doubts and misconceptions of equity crowdfunding. So please please do consider becoming an investor. Click on the link in our Refunder campaign, which will be posted in the chat room here or in the video below, and join bluShift's movement to sustain humanity's access to space using sustainably fueled rockets. Investors who can, by the way, investors again, who we can refer to Refunder actually enables us to remove any of those fees. So happy Halloween, and thank you all very much for attending this webinar, and looking forward to talking again in our next webinar and answering questions. Thank you all. Bye-bye.